Hey guys, what's going on? It's Nikole from Dogo Argentino USA, and in today's episode I'm going to talk about the price of a Dogo Argentino. I am frequently asked what is a fair price to pay for a Dogo. To be honest, this kind of question is much more complex than the person asking usually understands. Asking how much you should pay for a Dogo Argentino is a bit like asking how much you should spend on an engagement ring. For some people, the answer is as little as possible. And for other people, the answer is the sky's the limit. The problem with giving a solid answer to how much you should spend on your Dogo Argentino is that so many factors come into play that it's basically impossible to answer accurately because I don't know you personally. I don't know your family, I don't know your purpose in acquiring the dog, and I don't know anything about the dog you're asking about in the first place. So instead of telling you what you've got to spend, I'm going to talk about what I would spend on a Dogo Argentino and why. I will mix in various prices that I've been quoted by active Dogo Argentino breeders without naming names, both at home in the US and abroad. And I'll discuss what I personally charge for puppies that I personally breed, and I'm just going to mix all that information together. So you need to know that your mileage will vary. Now, if you're the kind of person that wants to spend the least amount possible on the Dogo Argentino price itself, you need to go straight to DC Dogo's Rescue, which is our national breed rescue, and adopt a rescued Dogo Argentino. Adoption fees start at $450, and you are not going to find yourself a better deal than that. Now you'll be buying a pre-owned Dogo Argentino and saving a Dogo that deserves a forever home. The caveat with rescues, just as with pups acquired directly from breeders, the upfront cost of the Dogo Argentino will only be between 5 and 15% of the total cost of ownership of that Dogo. So make sure that you can afford the total cost of owning a large breed, which is going to include far more than your initial purchase price. Okay, so let's say you're interested in going to a respectable breeder. For the purposes of this video, we're going to assume this is not some backyard breeder who doesn't give a darn about anything except how much cash they could pry out of your wallet and how quickly they can get rid of that pup. I'm going to assume that you want someone who puts love, hard work, and care into their bloodlines. Now let's say you come across a bilaterally deaf pup. That means a puppy who is deaf on both sides. To me, this is a special needs Dogo Argentino, and it's going to require a lot of special care. And there will be extra liability since deaf Dogos, sometimes called deafies, are more likely to startle bite than fully hearing Dogo Argentinos. To me, I personally wouldn't pay over $500 to $1,000 for a bilaterally deaf because of all the extra work and the specialized training. Even though a bilaterally deaf dog might make an obedient pet if you put in the work, it is strictly speaking a Dogo who does not meet breed standards, should not be bred, and is more challenging to socialize properly. Now let's say I came across a unilaterally deaf puppy, meaning a puppy who is deaf on only one side. For me personally, I wouldn't pay over $1,000 to $1,500 for a unilat. Unilat deaf dogs are more work to train, they're more reactive in their aggression, they offer greater liability to the owner, they don't meet breed standards, they cannot be registered with the National Breed Club, the Dogo Argentino Club of America, and for all these reasons, based on the fact that it is more work, I wouldn't personally want to pay more than that. $1,000, $1,500 max. That's just my opinion. Okay, so let's say that you came across a companion pet pup. It's got full hearing, but it comes with a small fault as the breed standard is concerned. For me, I might be willing to pay $1,500 to $2,000 for that because it's a companion puppy. Now the fault might be as simple as a coat flaw And sometimes coat flaws are thrown from healthy parents because they're recessive genes. And a coat flaw could be something like a small black spot on the tail, or an incorrect eye color, or a similar small fault. Maybe this dogo has an out of alignment bite, making it less effective in bite work or hunting, like it's got an undershot bite or an overshot bite. These minor differences, they really don't matter in obedience or companionship, but again, these are dogos that shouldn't be bred. And so for me, for a dog that is not including breeding rights and has a small fault, $1,500, $2,000, I think that's very fair. Now let's talk about a puppy who meets breed standard and is not having any minor faults in terms of the breed standard, but that puppy is sold as a pet. It's sold without breeding rights. For me, I would probably pay somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 for that puppy. This is a puppy that you're not going to breed because the registration papers have been marked not for breeding. So one of the ways that unscrupulous individuals try to get around that is they try to say that they're only going to use it for a pet, thinking that they can breed it later on and who's going to be the wiser. Well, one of the ways that registries deal with that issue is they allow the breeder to mark paperwork when the puppy is born that that puppy was sold without breeding rights. So if that person later tries to, say, approach the American Kennel Club and be like, I got a litter of pups, let me get that registration on. And the Kennel Club can look it up and be like, no, you didn't pay for breeding rights, none for you. And so any puppies that were bred from that dog could never ever be registered. They couldn't be proven to be purebred because they wouldn't be registered as having breeding rights. So let's say you're looking for breeding rights. Maybe you really want to breed, you're interested in that. That's going to be a valuable right and it's going to be more expensive. So I think a real standard price for breeding rights is going to be right around $2,500. And that can run all the way up to $5,000. The lower end is going to be a prospect, meaning you have a breeding prospect or you have a show prospect. So what's a prospect? A prospect is a puppy that looks good. It looks like it's going to grow to meet all the breed standard. But no breeder in the world, no matter their experience, can guarantee a puppy will grow up from a show prospect into a puppy that does well in the show ring. It's expected to. But sometimes things happen. Sometimes a puppy will be in perfect alignment in terms of its angulation, and that angulation will go out of whack and it will end up being too high in the rear and too low in the shoulders, or some other angulation of the bones just won't work out. So it's a prospect. You are taking a gamble, and that is completely normal. But to me, $2,500 is a reasonable price for breeding rights and a prospect puppy. For me, when you start to get up into the $5,000 range, what you're really looking at is buying the hard work of the breeder that you got the puppy from. And what do I mean by that? I mean that in terms of the bloodlines, the type, also known as the looks, the temperament, also known as its behavior, its personality, those are fixed, meaning that they're pretty standard because of the multiple generations of dogs that breeder bred. And so when you're starting to run up into the $5,000 range, what you're really doing is buying from a breeder that has multiple generations of dogs that they have personally bred, so that they have taken a lot of the hard work out of it for you. Meaning if you've got a $5,000 puppy, you are pretty darn sure that puppy is going to throw very fixed puppies, meaning they're going to be very consistent in type as long as you choose a breeding partner that is equally established in terms of its type and its temperament. So if you're looking from the $5,000 to the $10,000 range, at that point, to me personally, you are no longer buying a puppy. You are buying a young adult dog. And the reason that is because a young adult dog, you're not taking that risk anymore that it might grow inappropriately, it might grow out of standard. The standard is going to be reflected because the dog is, for the most part, through the main stage of growth. So to me, this is a dog that's a year and a half or older than that. For me, I would want to see at that $5,000 range that the dog is basically grown enough that I can tell that it's going to stay in standard. At the $10,000 range, to me, I'm looking for a dog that's ready to go in my breeding program, meaning a dog that has accomplished something. So it's what I would call a finished dog, meaning that it knows basic obedience, it's achieved a title, and for me that title could be anything from an obedience title like Companion Dog Excellent or higher. It could be a hunting dog like Master Hunter or higher, or it can be a champion or a grand champion with lots of wins in the show ring, depending on what the purpose of the breeding program was. I would want to see some health testing already completed at that point, because at that point I want the dog to be basically ready to go. I wouldn't pay $10,000 if the dog didn't have health testing complete. I wouldn't pay $10,000 if the dog didn't have lots of wins in the show ring, because I prefer to focus on competition in terms of conformation. I personally, at $10,000, would want to see proven fertility, because the purpose of me paying that amount of money would be to add it into my breeding program. So I wouldn't want to take the chance that the dog was infertile, even though that's uncommon. If it was a stud, I'd definitely want to know it had thrown a litter. Or if it was a bitch, I would want to know it had thrown some decent looking puppies at the $10,000 range. To me, there's definitely breeders in the United States that will charge $10,000. I know that because they've quoted me those prices. So that's the very, very high end, the upper echelon of what you would pay. Now, I think personally what you pay is a very personal decision. It depends on what you need, what you're looking for, and what your purpose is. So this is the reason I'm quoting those prices. Those are what I would be willing to pay. What you might be willing to pay could be completely different. Anyway, I hope these hard numbers are really helpful to you. As always, I'd love it if you gave me a subscription, a comment, a like, a share, and hit that bell for notifications. As always, have a Dogo-tastic day.